They're in the kitchen.
Where?
In the pantry.
Where?
On the left.
Where?
Eye level.
Where?
Blue container. Have you ever tried to explain something to someone and they just couldn't get it? As believers, we rightly feel we have a responsibility to communicate messages clearly, but life isn't always a straight line. So what I want to suggest today is that clear communication is not always the best option. There's actually a time to leave people confused, and because this might sound like a bit of a strange message, we're going to look at a figure in history who did this, and his name was Jesus. You see, contrary to what many think, Jesus did not always make matters clear, and I'm referring here in particular to his parables. Jesus' parables were at one level tools for communication. They were illustrations, they were memorable, they made points clear. But did you ever notice that Jesus never explained the parables to the crowds? In Matthew 13, following the parable of the sower, the disciples couldn't understand what Jesus was saying. So they asked, "Why do you speak in parables to the people?" He explained, "Because the knowledge of the secrets of the kingdom of heaven has been given to you, but not to them." You see, while Jesus did go on to explain the parables to the disciples, he didn't for the crowds. In Matthew 13, it says he didn't say anything to the crowds without using a parable. In John 16, the disciples talk about how Jesus' public speaking was actually unclear. It was shrouded in figures of speech. Yet when he was alone with his disciples, he explained everything. So why did he mask the truth to the public? I suggest it's because there were a range of people in the audience. Some who were interested, some disinterested, and others hostile. So for those who were interested, the parables could be reflected upon and could be understood. Mark 4 confirms this. Jesus expected that his followers would work out the meaning of the parables. But for those who were disinterested, it was different. The parables were a tool of intrigue to get people thinking, while for the hostile, well, it didn't give them the quotable quote or the media scoop they wanted, did it? So in short, what did the parables achieve? They were a mechanism for sifting audiences, speaking differently to those who were interested, disinterested, and hostile. Now, to apply this to us, firstly, Jesus spoke to the crowds, and so must we. None of this is an excuse for silence. But secondly, we must do this wisely, because there are sometimes a range of different people in our audiences. Now, Jesus spoke in parables. What could we say? We could, of course, give illustrations from the world around us like Jesus did. But I have another specific suggestion. How about we tell stories of God at work in our bicultural history, God at work in our values history, and God at work in people's lives today? Regarding our bicultural history here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, the Christian faith was foundational to the Treaty of Waitangi. The missionaries and their friends in England and all their anti-colonialistic ambitions are the reason the treaty came about that we have. The public don't know these stories, yet they validate why Christianity really is a core part of who we are as a nation. Regarding our values history, most of our nation's most treasured values have come through the Christian tradition. It was people of faith who helped establish radical Christian ideas in our thinking as a nation, like equality, selflessness, and integrity. These enabled us to become the caring, charitable, accepting, and prosperous nation that we are today. And regarding God at work in people's lives today, well, this is simply called testimony. And the fact is, stories of people finding hope are exactly the kinds of stories the public love to hear. To make the point, if we were to research and tell these kinds of stories more, they'd work just like the parables, bringing revelation to those who are ready for it, while intriguing those whose hearts were not, while giving those with hostile intent no grounds to attack us, because all we've done is tell a story from history. So in summary, there's a time to make a matter clear, but there's also a time to conceal a matter. As Jesus said, you don't throw your pearls to the swine. So let's learn from Jesus, because he not only thrived despite the hostility, he succeeded in changing the world.